Okay, thank you everybody. We are going to start, and I'm very delighted and honored to introduce Professor Michael Rutter. Professor Sir Michael Rutter is Professor of Developmental Psychopathology at the Institute of Psychiatry, King's College, London. He has been a consultant psychiatrist at the Moseley Hospital since 1966, and he was Professor of Child Psychiatry at the Institute of Psychiatry from 1973 to 1998. He set up the Medical Research Council Child Psychiatry Research Unit in 1984 and the Social, Genetic and Developmental Psychiatry Research Center 10 years later, being Honorary Director of both until October 1998. His research, you already know, has included the genetics of autism, the development of diagnostic and screening measures for autism, antisocial behavior, studies of both school and family influences on children's behavior, and he also has a special interest in the interplay between genetic and psychosocial risk factors. He was also Deputy Chairman of the Wellcome Trust Foundation from 1999 to 2004. He was elected a Fellow at the Royal Society in 1987 and was a founding Fellow of the Accademia Europea and the Academy of Medical Sciences, of which he was Clinical Vice President until 2009. He received numerous international honors and has published many books and over 400 scientific papers and chapters. It is an honor for Catania, for Italy, for Autism Europe to be here today.
Well, thank you very much for that generous introduction. It's a delight to be here. A bit of a challenge to try and summarize a broad area, but pleased to be here nevertheless. Inevitably, I need to be selective, and so I have decided not to cover basic science, and in particular animal models. We heard excellent talks yesterday on mirror neurons and on possibility of immunological factors. So I won't be saying any more about these. What I want to do is to start with focusing on various clinical issues. So, in a way, my beginning is very much the same as Nancy Minshew's, in that I will be focusing on looking at what the syndrome incorporates, and I will be critical of the notion that it can be boiled down to just three domains, or two domains, if you like, of key abnormalities. I will, like she was, also be critical of the notion of comorbidity. It's not that the notion has no meaning, but it's much abused, I think, in being applied to any co-occurrence of various patterns of symptomatology, where strictly speaking it means the co-occurrence of two different conditions. And that's really not the case in the relation to autism. One's mainly dealing with something which is multiple facets of the same thing. So let me start with regression. Papers on regression have been around for a long time, but recent work by Andrew Pickles and Gillian Baird, their colleagues, suggests that regression is much more common in autism than it is in other developmental disorders, and therefore may be a diagnostic pointer. Probably this applies to even minor regression, but then that raises the issue as to how you recognize that. And we do not know what neural processes are involved in the regression, and that is obviously a key challenge. Savant skills have been little mentioned at this meeting, but at least a third of individuals with autism show some kind of splinter skill or savant skill, mostly mathematical and calculating talents, although others also apply. And the rate appears to be well above that in other disorders. Patricia Howlin found in her study that those with such skills had a higher IQ than in those without, so that the old term of idiot savant is inappropriate. The skills may be associated with a detail-focused processing bias, but more evidence is needed. What accounts for the fact that autism is associated with both intellectual disability and superior talents? Any satisfactory pathophysiological explanation has got to take account of the fact that both occur. Epilepsy, we heard a little bit about at the meeting, not much. Follow-up studies such as those by Patrick Bulk and his colleagues have shown that autism is associated with epilepsy that is peculiar in that it is likely to have an onset in adolescence or early adult life. We found that in the first follow-up study back in 1970, and it's been confirmed in more recent ones. The unusual age of onset differentiates it from epilepsy both in the general population and in individuals with intellectual disability, and it must have some neuropathological meaning. But what that might be remains obscure. The increase of brain size in the preschool years is now well demonstrated. It was first seen in terms of studies of head circumference, but it's been confirmed by structural brain imaging. It's not yet known whether it represents neuronal overgrowth, malfunctioning neuronal pruning, or some other mechanism. And although systematic comparative studies are lacking, this increase seems peculiar to autism. And it does apply particularly to this preschool period. And it can't be, I think, purely coincidence that coincides with time when the main manifestations of autism first become evident. So again, it must have neural meaning, but what is it? We have had some talk about whether we need to think about autism in dimensional terms or as a clinical category. And there isn't any established agreement on that, but there does seem to be a consensus that the distinction between impaired social reciprocity and impaired communication is artificial. So I think it's appropriate that the DSM-5 group have said that these two should be merged. There's more uncertainty, I think, on the abnormal language features, such as pronominal reversal or delayed echolalia, and the various studies are a bit contradictory as to what that goes with. The evidence also suggests that repetitive stereotype behaviors are separate, although uncertainty remains on whether there should be a split between insistence on sameness and repetitive sensory motor behaviors. So again, we know that these are a key part of autism, but our understanding of their basis remains quite limited. We have had discussion during this meeting, although not much, on the broader phenotype, and we had papers this morning touching on this. Both epidemiological studies and twin studies have shown that autism extends well beyond the diagnostic concept, the handicapping disorder, put forward years ago. Milder, so these broader phenotype problems, a mixture of social and communicative impairments, are similar to, but milder than those found in autism. And the term has been put as a broader phenotype. Some limited progress, but really quite limited, have been made in measuring these by informant report, self-report and observation. But there is as yet no agreed set of measures as yet, and the phenomenon raises the query of how the broader phenotype becomes transformed into autism proper. Is there some kind of two-hit mechanism? And if there is, what might that be? Or is it simply a higher dose of the genetic liability? Again, we do not know. And in recognizing the broader phenotype, we need to take on board the fact that individuals with the broader phenotype do differ from autism with respect to not having an association with epilepsy, not having an association with intellectual disability, although the genetic liability seems similar. So, a lot still to be determined. We have had discussion during this meeting on prodromal features in infancy. Many studies have shown that the siblings of a child with autism have a much increased risk of developing autism. And that has led to multiple international so-called baby sibling studies in which the siblings are being studied prospectively from early in life to identify and delineate precursors of autism. Numerous good leads have been found, but definitive conclusions are still awaited. In the best of these studies, clinical measures are being combined with biological assessments. Possible preventive interventions have been suggested, but so far they remain speculative. And one of the key challenges is to move from group differences in terms of broader phenotype features, of prodromal features, to individual diagnostic features. Because if you can't make an individual comparison, then one really is in trouble in studying so-called prodromal features. And it is a characteristic of all biomarkers that they are good at group differentiations, but at least so far, none of them are very good at an individual diagnostic level. And if you look at the studies, what is very striking is the huge spread around any measure that you care to look at. We've heard a bit about adult functioning. Long-term follow-up studies have shown repeatedly over the years the very varied outcome. I'm going to emphasize the surprisingly high proportion of individuals with a performance IQ in the normal range, i.e., showing so-called higher functioning autism, which has a better prognosis than the rest. But of that group, many are severely impaired in adult life in their psychosocial functioning. We know less about the adult functioning of individuals with Asperger syndrome and the broader phenotype. The ongoing study being currently undertaken by Patricia Howlin and her colleagues are investigating this, but the small number of participants with a broader phenotype is likely to mean that we will still have a limited understanding of how they fare in adult life. In the better differentiated group with autism proper, then the issue is why this group with a generally good prognosis includes so many that are doing badly. Is that a function of inadequate services in childhood, of inadequate services in adult life, or is it a reflection of the basic biological problem? We don't know.